The moment my best friend whispered, "Are you awake?" from inside the same sleeping bag we were forced to share, I realized this camping trip was about to change both of our lives forever. The wind pushed gently against the tent, birds had finally fallen silent after a long summer day, and somewhere beyond the trees a quiet stream carried water over smooth stones. Nothing looked unusual. Nothing felt dangerous. Yet the fear and sadness hidden inside those 4 words would stay with me long after we packed our bags and returned home. If stories about kindness, friendship, and second chances mean something to you, thank you for being here and for sharing this journey with others who need hope. The camping trip had been planned for months. Our college hiking club organized a weekend in a beautiful national forest where the sunlight filtered through tall pine trees, wildflowers covered the open meadows, and crystal-clear lakes reflected the bright blue sky. Everything happened during warm daylight hours, making the forest feel welcoming instead of frightening. My best friend Rowan had almost canceled several times. She smiled whenever someone asked if she was excited, but I had known her long enough to recognize the difference between a happy smile and one carefully placed over hidden pain. When we reached the campsite, everyone laughed while pitching tents and preparing lunch over portable stoves. Rowan stayed unusually quiet, helping everyone else before thinking about herself. During our afternoon hike she walked beside me without saying much, occasionally stopping to admire butterflies or old trees as if she wanted time itself to slow down. I kept asking if everything was all right, and every answer sounded rehearsed. She insisted she was simply tired. Late in the afternoon, one of our tents collapsed after a pole snapped. Since there were no spare tents, our group leader suggested that Rowan and I share my small tent and a large insulated sleeping bag meant for 2 people. We laughed about how uncomfortable it might be, never imagining that this unexpected arrangement would become the reason a broken heart finally opened. The day remained beautiful. We explored the lakeshore, skipped stones across the water, collected strangely shaped pine cones, and took photographs beneath towering evergreens glowing under the afternoon sun. Everyone seemed carefree, but every now and then I caught Rowan staring into the distance with tears she refused to let fall. It hurt watching someone I loved like a sister carry a burden she wouldn't share. Night arrived quietly. After dinner, we sat around a small campfire listening to stories before climbing into our tents. The forest became peaceful. The sounds of insects blended with the soft breeze moving through branches overhead. Inside the sleeping bag, there was barely enough room for both of us, and we joked about how impossible it would be to sleep. Hours later, just as I was drifting off, Rowan turned slightly toward me and whispered, "Are you awake?" Those words sounded so fragile that every trace of sleep disappeared. I answered softly, and for several long seconds she remained silent. Then the truth finally emerged. She admitted that her mother had been diagnosed with a serious illness several months earlier. Rowan had hidden everything from nearly everyone because she didn't want pity. Between classes, work, hospital visits, and caring for her younger brother, she had become emotionally exhausted. She confessed that she no longer recognized herself. She smiled because everyone expected her to be the cheerful one, but inside she felt completely alone. Listening in the darkness, I realized how easily people can hide unimaginable pain behind ordinary conversations. The strongest people are often the ones quietly asking for help after everyone else has gone to sleep. I didn't have magical advice or perfect words. Instead, I simply stayed beside her. Sometimes friendship isn't about solving impossible problems. Sometimes it's about making sure someone doesn't face them alone. We talked until the first rays of morning sunlight began turning the tent golden from the outside. For the first time in months, Rowan admitted she felt lighter simply because someone finally knew the truth. The next day looked completely different. The same hiking trails seemed brighter. The fresh mountain air felt cleaner. Rowan wasn't suddenly free from her worries, but she no longer carried them by herself. During breakfast she laughed naturally, not because everything was fixed, but because hope had quietly returned. As we packed our equipment, the rest of our friends noticed the change without understanding its reason. They simply saw 2 best friends smiling more than they had the day before. Sometimes healing begins with something so small that nobody else notices, a conversation, a shared silence, or one honest question asked at exactly the right moment. Back home, our friendship became stronger than ever. I accompanied Rowan to hospital visits whenever she asked. Our friends eventually learned what she had been facing, and instead of treating her differently, they surrounded her family with meals, rides, encouragement, and practical help. Little by little, the impossible became manageable because many caring hands carried what one exhausted heart never could. Months later, Rowan told me that the camping trip had saved her in ways I never fully understood. She said that if we hadn't been forced to share that sleeping bag, she might have continued pretending everything was fine until she completely broke inside. What felt like an inconvenience became the beginning of her healing. Life rarely changes through grand miracles. More often it changes through quiet moments that almost seem ordinary while they happen. A shared meal. A walk beneath sunny trees. A friend who notices the sadness behind a smile. A whispered question in the middle of the night that finally opens the door to hope. If this story touched your heart, thank you for sharing it with someone who may need a reminder that they are never truly alone. Special request: tell us in the comments about someone whose friendship changed your life, or simply write, "You are not alone," to encourage anyone reading these words today. Years have passed since that camping trip, yet every time I see sunlight shining through tall pine trees or hear a gentle breeze moving across a quiet forest, I remember that one simple whisper. Not because it frightened me, but because it reminded me that kindness often begins with listening. We may never know who is silently carrying the heaviest burden, but we always have the power to become the safe place where someone finally finds the courage to say they need help. And sometimes, that single moment of compassion becomes the beginning of an entirely new life.